Hi guys, welcome to the channel. I'm Anthony and this is Aquascaping on the Fly, Living Art Creations. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to give you like a little tour of some of the terrariums that we've built in the past so you can see their current state and talk about some that I haven't really done a video on, but their progress as well, because right now I'm hovering around 30 terrarium builds and I'm getting ready to give some of those away so I can make room, because we are about to start embarking on the aquascaping side of the hobby. Yes, that's right. So you're getting a little bonus feature today about the 3 tanks I'm going to start with, which are the Trinity tanks. So I'm going to set up, I've kind of found a new way to showcase the builds individually. Instead of showing them in their location where I've got them, I'm going to put them up on a prop so that there's a background to it that doesn't interfere with the image of the terrarium itself. So I'm going to be moving each one to a location and then we'll just talk about it. So stick around, it should be fun. Thanks guys. Okay, so the first one up, this one was titled How to Make a Terrarium in a Fish Tank, and this was a full tutorial video. And this one is exactly 1 month old. What I loved about this one is the fact that it was the first enclosed larger terrarium that I did. And I tried to use a wide variety of plants. And my inspiration for this video was the fact of a nature trail that I use quite often that has hollowed out logs. It has water standing. It's very moss covered with ferns, which is not really typical for a lot of the trails where I am in north central Texas, because we're more, our climate is very deserty. Sometimes in the summertime, we can go long periods with drought. And this was my interpretation of that. So let's zoom in a little closer. It's doing very well, that I can say. Now, am I having trouble with gnats in the studio? You all know that. If you've watched any of my videos, I talk about how disastrous gnats can be. This one, I put Velcro. It has a glass lid that I got cut at Lowe's. The nice thing about Lowe's is they will cut your glass for free. You just buy the glass. And so I Velcroed the underside of the glass to the top of the tank, which is why I left the black rim on the tank itself. And I'm also using that for the lighting. So if you guys can tell, you can see the lighting is right there at the top. Now this lighting is inside the tank, and this is lighting that I'm using on my studio wall for the twigs that are above the shelves where the aquariums are going to go. And it also is on the workstation itself. I love this lighting because it has 4 different settings. It's full spectrum. It has a great glow about it, and the plants, as you can tell, are loving it. One in particular that I want to point out is the plant right there with the long leaf going across. That's a rattlesnake plant. I think that plant is definitely too big for the build. I don't know why I put it in there. I was putting a lot of stuff in there. And my prayer plant, which you can see to the back right, I have already had to cut it back twice because it's growing crazy fast. And it's really pushing out this, I think this is a dark mystery. I think that's what that is. The nice deep emerald green leaves with the kind of like lightly colored undercarriage of the leaves. That is getting pushed forward. Now I've got some plants in there that I haven't had anywhere else, that I haven't been able to grow anywhere else. And I'm going to zoom in on them just to give you an idea of how they're doing here. Okay, if my tripod will. Okay, so let's focus right now what we've got right here. There's 3 in this little shot. Okay, so you see the moss on the ground. Now, I've said this before in other builds that my moss in Texas does not like to be kept wet. It will die out. This is a moss here that grows in mounds. It keeps its own dirt, and it grows between rocks. I'm super excited that it is still growing in this condition, in this terrarium, because I was afraid it was not going to be able to grow in there because I thought it was going to be too humid. And so what I'm talking about is this moss right here and here, and then over on this side. One of the things I did is I just opened it up today to let some air in, and I was checking the moss out specifically because I wanted to make sure it was okay. Another plant, this one right here to the corner here, I do not know what that's called. So if anybody knows what that plant is, put it in a comment section. I ordered what they called terrarium plants off Amazon, and it was a pack of like 6. And it was a variety pack, and nothing had a name on it. And that's one of them. And I put it in there because I wanted to see how it would grow. It's not done anything. It's still the same size it was. Let's go walk over here. Here's another. I want to show you a problem plant I've got that I've had problems in every build I've put it in. Back here in the corner, you can see this pink and white. That is a snow white waffle. And I started with about 5 or 6 of these, and that I was growing off of a mother plant in my tubs. By the way, I do grow all my own plants in tubs, and that keeps my cost way, way down. Every time I put it in a build, it dies. I'm not sure what the problem is. Maybe it's not getting enough light. Maybe it grows so slow. Maybe it needs to be like cinder where the light is. I've got one small bell jar that I've put it in that I call my little hospital quarantine. I'm trying to see if I can get it to grow. One thing I do love about this, back to like the little places like here, moss, this type of stuff here, this all here. This is stuff that I got locally when I'm out doing foraging. So when I forage something and I see something pulling up, and that's a native Texas fern that's right there in the foreground, I try to keep all the dirt attached to it and then transplant it in its entirety. So in this one, this particular build, why I love it is I did lots of that. There's lots of little tiny plants like this that I've got growing inside there. It's really just like little tiny ferns. Now, forgive me, I'm gonna go open the lid, so it's gonna get bumpy. So hang on a sec. Okay, so here you've got the shot from up above. Now, one of the things is, you see right in the middle, that is actually the hollowed out log. I spent 2 days building it. When I was putting it in, it broke in half. So my hollowed out log had to be repaired, and it got a lot smaller. This does hold water, which is what I wanted to always have water in it. But because of the lighting, the water evaporates within like a couple of hours. Now behind here, we do have, this is a purple waffle plant, and it does very well in any enclosure I've had it in. So it's very different from the Snow White. I cannot remember the names of these, but they look like little palm trees to me, like something you would see in a tropical area. And I don't remember what the name is. Okay, so here you've got, now you can see prayer plant, just crazy. It's just going insane. But here is the interior shot. And I really do love how this turned out. And I still love how this turns out. So I'm really excited to see the progress that this terrarium will go through. So we're on to the next. Okay, next up. This one was titled Creating a Mini Terrarium Trio with Recycled Items. These actually are candle jars that I decided to reuse as a terrarium. What was challenging is the slender jars are the very slender Madonna candles. They're not even 2 inches across, and it was difficult to get them as far as getting all the wax out and getting it cleaned. The easiest way I found to get the wax out was just to put them upside down in an oven on low and let the wax just dry out and melt down to the bottom. So that was an easier fix. Cleaning them though, and getting able to put one plant in there, because that's basically all I could fit in there. So this one has the bottom, the heavier jar here, This is native Texas ferns, and I believe one leaf off of one a terrarium plant that hasn't grown yet, but it's not dead, so I'm hoping that it is going to sprout. This terrarium is not quite a month old yet. It's like lacking 4 days and it becomes 1 month old. I stuck the air plants to it because I thought it looked really cool. This one, what I loved, was my first attempt at building something from nature as a stand. And so what I love about this is I had this stick system, which looks incredible. I glued it to a rock that I loved, and then the tension in the branches are holding this one and this one in place. This one is just sitting there, so this one can be pulled out immediately. But these two are held in place by the tension between the branches. I love it. I think it's visually striking. It has a contrast between basically the blonde or beige or light brown concept color, and then you have the really dark soil with the complementary drain level, and then I went with a really soft green palette for each one of them. So I hope you guys like this one, but here's the update. It's one of my favorites because it costs literally hardly nothing. I think the entire build, if I had to put a price on it, the air plants, of course, yes, I paid for, but those I already had. I'm just putting them on there for decoration. But the only plant that I had to buy was this one and this one. And of course, I keep my soil in bulk, so that's not very much. Maybe $3. If I had to put a price on it, $3. And I think for $3, this would make a great craft project if you're into that. This would also be an awesome idea if you have kids that want to get into terrariums. This is a super easy way to do it, and the vessels are tiny, and you can still put your little bugs in there if you want to, so they can see what the bugs are doing inside the terrarium. But I think it looks amazing, and I hope you guys do too. Oh goodness, this one. Okay, this was a part of the Thrift Flip terrarium series where I took 5 vessels that we got at Goodwill, and the price point on each one of them was just $3. This one was the candle holder to Spring Oasis. It had the fountain in it. It had the park fountain. The fountain was a nightmare. I had the fountain where the plant is now, and this was the water source. I could never get the finial from the lamp that I was using as the fountain spout to work correctly. It either was barely trickle, it wouldn't trickle, or it would shoot straight up to the top. So out of frustration, I just yanked it out. This cannot come. If this comes out, I think I'll bust the bottom because the bottom is super, super thin. What I did, this is the first one that I really went to town on the moss. Okay, so let's get a closer look up at this. And you know, this one had the least amount of views. I don't think anyone liked this one. I liked it because I thought it was cool, but I don't think anyone else did. Now, this is the moss that I always have the trouble with that, you guys can't see what I'm pointing at. This is the moss that does not like to be wet. And so I wanted to keep this drier. It's doing okay, but if you remember, I had grass, and I only have like a couple of them. I don't know if they're coming back or if it's just not dying out as fast as the other, but it was encircled by grass around it. And there's a little bed, a little raised bed right here that's made out of the same material, which by the way was a Whataburger cup, styrofoam cup. And I put the rocks in, and I've got a little Hoya in the back trying to see if it'll root in this setup here. Because I'm not having much luck with getting it to grow. I mean, they maintain themselves, but they really don't grow. My Christmas cactus has been growing like crazy under my growth lights. And it is March. My Christmas cactus has not stopped blooming since November. So I'm doing something right because it's blooming like crazy. These shoots came off of it. I had them in Kong, before I had to take Kong apart, and I wanted to put them in another build. They don't like a lot of water. This doesn't like a lot of water. So I thought, okay, this is a marriage made in heaven. I'm going to put these two together. It's got its own light source, which I love because then it's mobile and you can put it anywhere you want to put it. I really have it now in the studio area, but I think it would be great in a bathroom or another area. It's just my space is really, really limited. I still want to do some filming updates on this, so I'm not ready to give this one away yet. I did offer it to my sister, and she's like, oh, it has cactus. I don't want anything with the cactus. And I'm like, oh, it's not like the kind of cactus. Anyway, that's another story. But it's holding its own except for the grass area. I'm glad the fountain is out of there because it was just annoying me like crazy. I turned that fountain into a tabletop, and I can't even use that inside the studio because of my gnat problem. They find out water source and they want to put their eggs in it. So until I get rid of my gnat problems, I won't even be using the tabletop fountain. But that's the update on this build. And I have another one I want to show you. There was another lantern that got more reviews. Okay, so here we have, this one was part of the same series, the Thrift Flip, but this one is making a terrarium out of lanterns from thrift store finds is actually the technical title of this one. Sounds kind of convoluted now that I think about it. The last time it was easier. This is actually one of my personal favorites, but one that I hated building because it cut me like 6 or 7 times all over the place. Every edge on this thing is sharp. And like oh, and you can see an isopod going right through there. I've got orange isopods in these builds. And we just saw one crawl across the slate in the back. That's amazing. So this was one of my favorites because number one of the slate that I glued to the back end of the lantern. That's my backdrop. That's my drama. Part of my drama was this multicolored branch that I put in the foreground that really ties together, really for the Rex begonia. I mean, the coloring between the begonia, the slate, and the branch are just phenomenal. And then there's I believe that's a dark mystery at the top, and then a glacier. Oh, I can't remember the rest of it. So I've got 3 plants in there. I had a Snow White, and I believe, like the other builds, she is gone. Let's zoom in. Yes, she was right by this little rock right there. And no, she's not there. So here's like a close-up where you can see. I don't think it gets any better than a plant than a Rex begonia. The coloring is amazing. Now, I will have to transplant that out because it will get way too big for the enclosure. But for right now, it's just beautiful. I'm loving the textures and the color sequences going through in this build. I think it's really surprising in such a small little enclosure. Now, the one thing I did try that's not actually working that well on camera, it looks a little greener, is the moss that's topping the slate rock. Now, that is normally a dark emerald color, and it's barely hanging on at a faded green. So it's not getting enough moisture. I did just spray this down. I've not been spraying them down because I've been trying to see how they'll just grow naturally. But of course, this one is not a strict sealed terrarium. It's got openings all around it. And the only thing I do for the front of it, because it's a continuous opening around that doorway, is I do put saran wrap around the door. And I've been able to keep the gnats down to a minimum inside there, which is nice because I'm fighting it with some of the other builds to keep them out of it as well. Once I get them out of the builds, I have Bug Zapper. I've just ordered 2 more Bug Zappers to keep going continuously to get the ones that are in the studio that I cannot find. They go into hiding and I don't know where they're going. But I'm trying to protect all the builds at this point. So that is the update for this one. Oh, here's a sad one. This one was making a magical DIY Snow White terrarium, and I handmade the wishing well that's in the middle and her arch that is still standing, but part of it came apart. And as you can see, it was full of plants when I planted it, and they've all perished. So all I've got left is the rattlesnake my Texas fern right here. I can't tell if it's going to survive or not. And then I have 2 leaves that I've kept in there to see if they at least will root. Now my moss hasn't completely died out in this one. It's hanging on. So this one I'm just keeping and monitoring it. I don't want to put anything else in there yet until I know what's going to happen with it. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because I crowded it with plants. That's probably the reason that it did not do so well. But the whole inspiration for this was to put one of my Snow White plants into a build specifically, and that's why I went with this theme. And the Snow White plant was the first thing to die. So I promise you guys realism, and here's one that is failing on an epic level. So if it continues to do this, I'll just pull everything out and then start with a different concept on the inside of this one. Okay, so here we have what I call the outer worldly build. What I love about this one, it is a really big departure from a typical terrarium. First of all, I'm using a Art Deco etched glass punch bowl as my vessel. And as you can see here in the video, the etchings are absolutely gorgeous and they're spot on for what I'm using it for, because it's plants and looks like flowers in the etching. Now I'm going for an open concept, and so I've placed in on purpose these branches that go up more than 2 feet out of the punch bowl itself. And the point of that is the plants that I put in there, I am kind of taking a risk, but I believe they can all exist outside of the typical humid enclosed terrarium, and they all grow vertically very tall. So I am hoping that as these plants grow up, they will grow up to meet the height of the branches that are already there. And so that's kind of my goal. So the rattlesnake plant is one that says it does need the humidity. So when I'm home, I am misting the plants down. The other ones are, I think they are the peperomia varieties. And so they're the waxy leaves. I'm hoping they'll be just perfectly fine in there. And I've got actually 3 varieties in there. And then I topped the whole thing off with rock. And I gave it a generous substrate because I do want the plants to get big, and I want this to be like a permanent build for me. So this one is right from the get-go was my favorite. It was one of the vessels that I bought at the Angel's Attic, and this was less than I want to say it was either $7 or $8. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh my gosh, this would make a beautiful terrarium. So I'm loving it. I hope you guys love it. Let's move on to the next. Okay, what I love about this is you never know what glitches you're going to have recording a video. So my mic was dead, so I'm going to do a voiceover. This one here, the waterfall in the jar, which was a former water jar itself, is everyone's favorite. This is the first waterfall I built. It's 2-tiered. So it has 2 separate tiers. One was built inside the jar because it became so large I had to put it inside. And then I built the second tier separate and then attached them together. So they can be pulled out for maintenance, which is amazing. It's a 3-watt pump. I wish it was a little bit bigger because it would give me more cascading sound, but it is a sweet little waterfall. I've got native Texas fern in there. I've got some water plants in there. I have, as you can see, plants that I'm wanting to root in there. And then I even have a couple of plants planted at the very top with just a little bit of my terrestrial moss, just to see if I can get them to grow outside like this. Normally my moss does not like to be this wet. It is still green, which I'm really surprised. It's not the one that always dies inside a terrarium. It's another version of it, and I'm hoping that it will survive. Now, the 2 water plants that I have in there, their names escape me, but they are native to North America. And so I've just got them in there to let them grow out because I believe I'm going to be using these in my aquascapes that we start later with. But this little jar is really cute. I love the fact that everyone just loves it because it really was kind of an easy build. It was just a challenge for the waterfall. Glad you guys enjoy it though. Okay, so no video would be complete without this one. It is my immediate favorite. Now, you guys know if you've watched any of my videos that I do love a good theme. I had Kong, I had Snow White. This is Harry Potter. And not only is this Harry Potter, this is a follow-up to where the movie left off, the last in the installment. This is the Elder Wand rediscovered in the Forbidden Forest. So in the movie, we see Harry Potter break the wand in half and throw it into the cavern below on the grounds of Hogwarts School. Now, the Forbidden Forest is on the grounds of the school behind it. And what we find here is not only is the Elder Wand fine, it is completely restored itself. It is now situated, hovering on a rock, just like the sword and the stone, waiting for the next chosen one. And so anyway, that's my interpretation of this. Since we are talking about the Forbidden Forest from the movie versions, a lot of central integral characters were introduced, and it was always dark themes and scary. So I wanted to go with some plants that had a little darker coloring to them. I put a variety of ferns in there, and then I also put some bark that had different moss growing on it. So I have a lot of tiny stuff in there that shows great detail. And the one rock is a favorite of mine that I balanced the Elder Wand on. And as a side note, the Elder Wand required just 2 little snippings of it to get it into this shape. So when I found this in my nature walk, I knew immediately this was a wand. And as soon as I thought, oh, that's a wand, I thought of the Elder Wand. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a theme build. This is going to be Harry Potter. But now the theme just does not showcase what's inside this gorgeous hurricane shade. What I love about it is it has this really beefy base to it. The whole shade itself is much thicker than what you normally find and much taller. And I wanted to be completely different than what most people would do with something like this, and to lay it on its side. Not only to lay it on its side, as you look at this build, it looks like it is being balanced between the 2 ends of the wood. And the wood to me embodies the Forbidden Forest and the darkness because the bark on here is black. Now, this bark that I found was from one of my very first nature walks. So I've had this bark for more than 3 months. And what I loved about it is I just brought it in, cleaned it, and I thought, okay, if I'm going to put this in an aquascape, I'm going to seal it with Gorilla Glue. So that's all I did. I sealed it so its coloring was intact. But when I saw the Elder Wand, I knew with this hurricane shade, I could put these 2 pieces together and build a foundation for it. And I had to play around a lot with this, but once I finally got them to where it would balance itself and sit upright with just me prompting a few felt pads under it, then I knew, oh my gosh, this is really and truly, in my opinion, a work of art. This goes beyond a terrarium. This is another one of the terrariums where you take something that's completely unexpected, which is a hurricane shade that's open on both ends. And so I'm tilting it on its side, and it's being balanced on this beautifully aged wood. I don't think it gets any better than this. I do want to show you a top photo of this though, so you can see the detail of what's going in the substrate soil there. Okay, certainly not last, not in the least, is the former Kong Skull Island, now transformed into my desert oasis. All right, so this has by far been the most challenging build starting from the very beginning of my hobby experience. When it was Kong, it was glorious, it was beautiful, it was gnat infested. I came in from a trip after a month of treating it. It had a bug zapper in it for a month. I had no idea the amount of gnats that were in there. I just knew what I could see. When I started pulling the plants out, I saw the problem lie between the fact that the wood that I had attached to the wall structure, which I had vinyl up first, and then wood attached to that with great stuff, the gnats were behind that, and that's where they were breeding. And when I pulled the walls out, I just about freaked out. I had to do it in seconds to get it out of the entire studio because it was gnat infested and it was just a nightmare. So I saved the plants. I saved the rock foundation, the pebble foundation that was a drainage layer. I decided I wanted a water feature. Kong had a water feature. Kong had a rain system, a rainforest system, and it just dropped droplets of rain on it, and it looked glorious. So this time I went with a 5-watt pump. I built the waterfall intact. So the waterfall has a larger base rock, which you can see just at the plant level below it. And what I'm talking about is there's plants right down there. The green leaves that's a water pool that they're in. And then that large rock though, that's the base. And then I started from the left and worked my way all up to the right top. So what I love about it is that it does give me like a spiral staircase type of waterfall that goes all the way around. Now, this pump is almost on its lowest setting it could be on because the pool that's under it is very, very small. And I put a rock base around it in silicone. Now, if the pump was any higher, it would drip over the rock base and get into the whole structure down here. So what I did was I had to waterproof the whole thing. So I sprayed my Gorilla Glue on several layers to seal the walls itself, because what I was finding out during the construction of this build is that gnats were still coming back into the place where they had had their 2 highest concentration of colonies. And so once I sealed the brick, because they were getting into the crevices and I did not realize that. So once I sealed it, then they stopped. They would come in, but then they would leave. And so then I sealed the bottom of it. And then I caulked all the seams. And what I did then is I initially just laid my plants in their pots along the foundation of the firebox just to see if this was an even viable option. And because it's not a true terrarium, it's not humid in there. It does not fog up. I can go in and mist it and it does nothing. So my worry is, will these plants survive in the long run? Now, that was a week ago, just 2 or 3 days ago, I went in with plastic shopping bags and I filled the gaps between all the pots that you see, especially here on the ground level. So I intertwined wadded up plastic all through here, and to get height on the back sides, put some risers in for the plants that are in the elevated section. Then I went in with 3 different sizes of rock and filled the whole area in rock. And then the last thing I did was put some sand on top. And I put some sand on top of the plants as well, because I do not want to have gnats coming into this again. I've read online where gnats do not like dry sand and dry rock. They won't lay their eggs there because it has to be a moist. So to get them to get in and get into where the moisture is underneath the rocks in the pots themselves. So I'm trying to stop that completely. since I have undergone this transformation, I found one gnat in there one time, but I've had no births in there whatsoever. So I'm sure it's just a gnat that's going in and exploring the area and then got trapped once it was inside there. The waterfall, I don't run that often, and the only downside is because my pool is so small, and you can tell I have water plants in there along with plants I'm starting to get rooted, and the water evaporates very quickly because this light is on for 14 hours a day. So the one thing I have seen, because I've been monitoring the plants very, very closely, and the Rex begonia has gotten one brand new leaf since it's been in here, and this is after the redo from Calm, because I had to cut all the plants down drastically because they were all suffering because they were basically waterlogged at that point. And the prayer plant up at the top, that one I was especially worried about, but it now has a brand new leaf coming out on it. So I'm hoping that the plants will do really well in here, because I think once they grow, it will blur the lines between the rock and the pots, and it will look a lot more realistic. I had planned on putting some of my moss in the terrarium to begin with, but then I thought, no, I'm going to stick with my theme that this is the desert, so there wouldn't be any moss in there, which is good, because if I put moss in there, I probably would attract gnats again. I will say there's one succulent right there. You see one stem standing up. That's from a layover I had in San Diego, and it looks like it is just fine in here. And my ivy right here has a brand new leaf coming out on it. I've noticed since I've put this one in, it's turned direction a little bit. So I feel like they're probably in their transition stage. And right now they all look like they're going to be doing pretty well. I hope they do, because I love this as a live terrarium versus it just being a firebox. And I'm not even bothered by the fact that you see the brick on the back side of it, because once I sealed it, the brick turned color and it looks a lot better than it did before. Before you could see burn marks on it. Now it just blends in as this beautiful color, and it looks really, really good with the rocks. Now, speaking about these rocks, all these larger rocks are rocks I have found at different places on my either nature walks or trash or construction sites. And I've just kind of like tried to blend them together. And I bought one size of rock. You can see these round ones. I bought a bag of those at Home Depot. But the pebble ones I went out scourging a riverbed and found other rocks that are more worn that look like they go with these. And I think it looks really, really cool. The hardest part was trying to hide the pots that are on the elevated section, because there's just no way I could pile up enough rocks that wouldn't invade the other plants. And I know that the plants will grow through wherever the rocks are if there's rocks sitting in their pot. So I'm not worried about that. I just want to make sure these all do really, really well. So that's it for me and the update. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please give me a like, thumbs up, whatever you want to do. If you want to see more content, please subscribe. And I love the comments. So if you've got any comments about the builds or questions, just ask away. And because what I love about the channel is that we're creating a real community between people out there all across the world. So until the next video, you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.